Hi, Grandma is here, and I am reading from the book It's a Jungle Out There by Ron Snell. To review a little bit, this is a book primarily about a family who has lived in the jungles of Peru and their adventures. The parents work with the Wycliffe Bible Society, translating Bibles into the native language of one of the Indian tribes that's there. This chapter is going to be a little bit of a problem. It has a lot of place names in it that I am unfamiliar with. I have looked up the pronunciations. Now if I can just do it, I'll try my best. The first, this is chapter 2, and I want to start out with a picture, and it's a photo of planes, and these are seaplanes. You notice that on the bottom they have like little skis so that they can land in water. Chapter 2, let me try it all over again. Yarinococha. And then there was a time, well, I suppose I should back up a bit. After all, I wasn't born on a log in the Kamasaya. The story of how I got there is as interesting as the ride itself. It all began when I was conceived in the jungle within a couple weeks of my parents' arrival in Peru. I can't be more specific about the timing because they won't. Still, I'm terribly proud of my rainforest roots, even though I didn't have a thing to do with it. It was a close call. 2 weeks after I became me, Dad and Mom returned to Lima to study Spanish. You may have been conceived in the green jungle, Mom once told me with just a bit of bashful modesty, but you developed on green apples in Lima. The green apples kept Mom and therefore me alive long enough to be born. Within weeks of my birth, we were on our way back to the jungle. More specifically, we were on our way to Pucallpa and Yarinococha, two places that were even more obscure than they sound. Fawcett Airlines had a bi-weekly plane to Pucallpa. Not that it always made it, but at least it was scheduled. We boarded a DC-3 for what we hoped would be a successful flight over the Andes, which are the mountains. The DC-3 couldn't quite make it over the tops of the highest mountains, so it had to fly through a lower pass. Frequently, the pass was filled with clouds, forcing a return to Lima and a retry the next day. Sometimes passengers had to try 4 or 5 days in a row before they finally made it through to the jungle. The only alternative was a 500-mile one-lane road that only a drunk trucker would travel. A drunk trucker or my dad, but that's another story. The climb out of Lima was breathtaking, literally. Within a few minutes, everyone on board had a clear plastic umbilical cord blowing oxygen into his mouth or nose. The only way to keep passengers from passing out at 16,000 feet in the unpressurized cabin. Luckily for us, the pass was clear on our first try, and the landing in Tingo Maria was more fuel was routine. In the air again, we flew northeast through the mountains. Then as abruptly as they had reared up, the mountains fell away, sinking into an endless ocean of deep green jungle, dotted here and there with the exceptional red or yellow tree. "You can put your oxygen tubes away now," the flight attendant announced in Spanish. Eardrums popped the other direction, and the cabin temperature began to climb tropically. We were going down. Pucallpa's airstrip didn't exactly inspire confidence. It was made of red clay that swelled and shrank in the alternating heat and rain. That made for mud sometimes, dust sometimes, and bumps all the time. Then, of course, there were always pigs on the runway. Wallowing in the mud holes and dugs, fighting over scraps, that meant the pilot had to buzz the strip 3 or 4 times to scare the animals away and then land before they decided it was safe to come back out. In spite of the obstacles, our highly skilled pilot performed his biweekly miracle once again and got us safely on the ground, around the mud holes, and stopped before the end of the runway. Dad and Mom clambered onto a dank, musty humidity, each carrying a baby boy. "Hey, welcome to Pucallpa. How was the flight?" It was Uncle Les Bancroft's job to meet the plane this week. He wasn't really our uncle, but we called every adult we knew aunt or uncle to show respect and to make up for the fact that we didn't even know our real aunts and uncles. "Well, let's get your bags and then we'll get on out to Yarinococha." Uncle Les and Dad hoisted us into the truck. A 15-second look at Pucallpa was enough to make anyone wonder why they had just risked their lives to get there. It was a ramshackle, clapboard frontier town of 2,000 people, 2 jeeps, and 2 stores built on red clay beside the mighty Ucayali River. Feet, bicycles, and horses got people around town. 2 arteries pumped life into Pucallpa. The first was the Ucayali itself, connecting Peru to Brazil via the Amazon River. Boats could bring raw materials from upriver and goods from downriver. I'm beginning to wonder if the map would show us some of this. Here is our map, if you'll recall. And you have to look at this map of Peru, not the big white one, but the map of Peru is what you have to look at for this trip. Okay, continuing. Boats could bring raw materials from upriver and goods from downriver. The second artery was the winding, rutted road connecting it to Lima. Trucks carried the raw materials to Lima and returned with frontier essentials. Are you all set? The 5-mile trip from Pucallpa and Yarinococha could easily take 3 hours, so Uncle Les was eager to start back. A rutted, undrained road had been hacked out of the jungle by early pioneers. Then they acquired a military surplus Burma Jeep to drive over it. The Burma Jeep was more a monstrous, primeval, green, mutant pickup truck than a Jeep. It was designed to knock down trees, stop marauding elephants, and transport soldiers with no nerves in their butts. Okay, I'm going to stop there. There are no elephants in this jungle. Remember, the Jeep was a Burma Jeep. In Burma, they do have elephants, and the Jeep was constructed to help with the elephants in Burma. But there are no elephants in Peru that are wild. With its high clearance and massive winch, the Burma Jeep could go most anywhere. Passengers sat on a hard wooden fold-down benches that ran the length of the uncovered bed. There was little to hold on to except each other and the luggage. The transmission, lacking synchro mesh gears, growled angrily every time Uncle Les tried to shift. After an hour, we passed an enormous tree that towered over the road. "We're halfway," Uncle Les shouted, as if going 3 miles in an hour was excellent progress. "That tree is our marker. Only 2.5 miles to go." I'm beginning to wonder if they could have walked it just as quickly. An hour later, covered with dust and bruised from top to bottom, mainly bottom, we reached Yarinococha, this small cluster of clapboard houses perched on the high bank of a 10-mile-long oxbow lake formed when the Ucayali River changed course. Peru's Minister of Education had given the land to the Summer Institute of Linguistics, SIL, a sister organization to Wycliffe Bible Translators, to be used as headquarters for educational work in the jungle. We broke out onto the lake and ground up a long hill to the main building on the center. Sandaled colleagues in rumpled clothes came running when they heard the Burma Jeep come in. "Welcome to Yarinococha! Great to have you back. Did you bring the mail from Lima?" It was clear they cared more about the mail than us. Smiles, jokes, renewed friendship, and camaraderie all around as strong arms lowered Mom and Terry and me to the unbouncing ground. We were all slathered with bug repellent to keep from being consumed by chiggers. The repellent helped a lot, but even so, one of the first things any new arrival had to learn was how to scratch pretty personal places without looking like they were scratching. Some people got so good at it that we all just thought they were dancing to some strange tribal music. After unpacking the essentials in a one-room thatched house, now if a house is thatched, what they're talking about is the roof is made of usually palm leaves, but it's made from vegetation, not from wood or shingles or stones like our houses are. After unpacking the essentials in a one-room thatched house, we joined the hardy gang to bathe and supper in the common dining hall, the only place to eat. Then, totally done in, we probed our way by flashlight to bed. We had come home. Home to howler monkeys, cicadas, mangoes, tarantulas, mosquitoes, tin roofs, screen windows, outhouses, bananas, orchids, and piranhas. Now, I know you know what monkeys and cicadas and mangoes and tarantulas and mosquitoes and all of that are, but a piranha, what is a piranha? It is a fish, and it is from the Amazon, which is, they are on tributaries to the Amazon River. And it is flesh-eating. It eats animals. Now, there are a lot of fish that eat animals, but piranhas has some really nasty-looking teeth. Make sure you try and Google it so that you can see what a piranha looks like. You don't want to be swimming in a pool that has piranhas in it. That first night, as owls hooted and giant rhinoceros beetles banged into the screens and hopeful frogs croaked seductively to their mates, Dad and Mom paused to thank God for the privilege of finally being on the edge of nowhere, on their way to the middle of nowhere. My life at 6 weeks of age had come full circle. I learned to crawl on our mahogany floor while Dad and Mom tried to figure out which tribe they would translate the Bible for. That wasn't quite as simple as it sounds, since no one quite knew what tribes were out there. Uncle Cam Townsend, the founder and director of Wycliffe Bible Translators and SIL, had already recruited Dad to do some pretty hairy work trying to sort it all out. "Wayne, we need someone to go exploring for us. Would you spend some time finding out who's out there in the jungle and whether or not we could work with them? Never mind that some of those unknown tribal groups were inclined to kill outsiders." Now, I just wonder why they would choose a man who has 2 babies to do the exploring with tribes that may not be friendly to missionaries. But anyway, by the time Dad had wandered the jungle by airplane, canoe, and trail and had spent nights running away from hostile Indians who presumably didn't want him to work there, his list of possible tribes included the Shimaku, Aguaruna, Huitoto, and Orajan. Once the list of tribal names started to grow, the SIL teams chose which ones they'd like to work with. We'd like to work with the Shimaku, Dad and Mom ventured. Well, I really kind of had my heart set on them, someone else answered. All right then, we'll work the Huitotos. I think the Lord is directing us to work with them, said another team with a stronger sense of guidance. Whenever the Machigingas came up, my folks said no thanks, they weren't interested. But of course, they said they would pray about it, because even if you're not at all jazzed about something, when you're a missionary, you have to say you'll pray about it. Eventually, the Machingingas were about the only ones left. So, Dad and Mom became their linguists, and we have never been sorry. Now, if you'll recall from me reading the back of the book, they call them sometimes the Machis. That's the tribe that Ron and his brother Terry grew up with. So that's the tribe they go to. Okay, the next chapter I'm not going to read today because it's kind of a long one, is called Air Knockers. And I'm going to show you the picture. So what do you think an air knocker is? Well, again, look at this picture. Does that look like a modern airplane you want to get on with two little blonde boys? It takes a special kind of person to be a missionary, especially to tribes that have not had very much Western exposure. But we'll find out more about the air knockers and the Mashigingas the next time. Bye-bye.